So today we're going to be looking at the final method for solving our quadratic equations, which is called the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is basically this right here that we're going to want to know. And the bonus for the quadratic formula is it works for all quadratic equations. So just like completing the square. But the bonus is, remember how with completing the square, if a is not equal to 1, we have to remember to divide, and sometimes we get it with fractions, and not always so great with that. The quadratic formula doesn't really care about what a, b, and c are, as long as you have a number for you to plug in, you just plug it into the formula. So the one thing you want to make sure you're doing is make sure we are in standard form. So notice this is standard form equaling 0. Once we're in standard form, we're good to go. Okay? So if you take a look at example A, we're going to solve using the quadratic formula, leaving our answer as a simplified radical. So what we want to do is first make sure we're in standard form. So is it equal to 0? Perfect. Once we're there, take out the values of a, b, and c. And remember, those are the numbers in front. So a is 12, b is -4, and c is -5. Very important you don't lose those signs, right? If it's negative, we want to make sure we keep it negative. And then all you're going to do is write your quadratic formula. And then substitute in the appropriate values. So we're going to put in 12 for a, -4 for b, and -5 for c. So x equals, and it's always negative, just like your axis of symmetry. So negative b would be -4 plus or minus the square root of, once again, b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And I realize I don't have a lot of space on here, so I'm going to just kind of move over to the side for this one. So go ahead and do your PEMDAS one step at a time. So we're going to look at your exponent. So we want to get one number inside that square root, right? And then simplify that if we can, then add and subtract to get rid of the expression in the numerator, then multiply on the bottom and divide by the denominator. So let me just go through this. So x will equal, I know the opposite of -4 is +4, plus or minus the square root of, then I want to do the square first, so 16 minus 4 times 12 times -5 all over 2a, and that's 24. So x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of, and then make sure you multiply left to right, keeping the signs the way they are. So -4 times -12 is -48. So minus 48 times -5 all over 24. So I'm going to bring this up here because I'm out of space. So then we get x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 240, right? Plus because a negative times a negative is positive, still all over 24. And we're going to just keep going. So 4 plus or minus the square root of 256 all over 24. And then you want to ask yourself, can I simplify the square root of 256? Is it a perfect square, right? Can I take out pairs? Check that out, and you'll see that this ends up being 16. So the square root of 256 is 16 all over 24. And then just like before, if we can keep going, we want to keep going. So since I don't have anything in square roots left, let's separate this. So we get x equals 4 plus 16 over 24, or x equals 4 minus 16 over 24. So then we get 20 over 24, which reduces down to 5 over 6. And this gives us -12 over 24, which reduces down to -1/2. So those are our two answers. So plus side of the quadratic formula works for everything. As you can see, kind of the downside is there's a lot of places for errors, right? If you forget the negative 4, or if you forget to do the opposite of b, one little sign difference can make it all out of whack. Okay? Let's go ahead and look at b, and I'm just going to go ahead and skip c. So let's go ahead and do b. X squared plus 2x equals 9. Remember, what's the first thing you want to do? We want to make sure this is in what format? Right, we want to make sure it's in standard form. So I'm going to take away 9 from both sides. So x squared plus 2x minus 9 equals 0. And then we want to take out your a, b, and c values. So what would a, b, and c be here? Let me just rewrite that x squared so it's a little clearer. So what's a, b, and c? A is 1. B is 2, and C is negative 9. So then we want to go ahead and substitute this into our quadratic formula, right, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? So plug that in appropriately and we get negative of 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 9. Well, let me move this over a bit. All over 2 times 1. And again, it's just a matter of making sure your PEMDAS is all correct. And that's the biggest issue that I see. Let's get this over a little bit more. Right, so as I'm working through this, you're going to see that just taking it one step at a time can definitely be helpful when you want to retrace your steps in case you feel like you got the wrong answer. You just want to double check. So 4 times 1 is, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 still. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 36 all over 2. And then this turns into 40. And in this case, we don't know what the square root of 40 is, so bummer, let's go ahead and just simplify that, right? So we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root 10 all over 2. And then you want to simplify whatever you can. And this is where splitting this up into two fractions might be useful. So all I'm doing is separating, negative 2 over 2 and 2 square root 10 over 2. Let me make that a little clearer. And then we can simplify that to a negative 1 plus or minus square root 10. So it's possible to get answers that are not nice and pretty. All right, the last example we're not doing, but if you worked it out, I believe that one would actually give you a no solution, which is when you have a negative in the square root, which is also true, right? We can still have one, none, or no solution. Okay, so what I'd like you guys to do is, I know it does take a little bit of work to think through your PEMDAS, so let's just do a couple of these. All right, let's do number 2 and number 3, and let's just go ahead and skip number 1, and we'll come back and check our answers. Okay, go ahead and check your answers. One thing about number 2, either one of those formats would be fine. I would normally recommend you try to break it up, like this bottom one, just to see if you can reduce your fractions. But I'm okay if you leave them as either answer, as long as it's completely reduced. That's the big thing. Okay, number 3 is 1/2. Please come back to class with questions, and then we'll finish the notes off as well. Thanks for listening.